let's take a look at the Blitzer bomber. These things, quote unquote, aim their bombs by diving at the target and then releasing their boom bombs at the very last minute. And also armed with a pair of super shooters and a Grotman big shooter. Now, orcs being orcs, they tend to forget they're in a dive and end up kamikazing sometimes. Because, let's be honest, orcs aren't the smartest bunch.
All I have to say is that poor Grot. Blitzer bombers are a variant of the Burner bomber. To the letter and to the design, they are the exact same aircraft. Except for you just changed the payload. And by change the payload, you didn't actually think this one through. Because you went from the incendiary explosives to literally putting a bomb bigger than the aircraft on the aircraft and then expecting it to do something with it.
Again, these are orcs. Did you really expect them to think this through?
No, but this level of explosive is normally reserved for cruise missiles.
And they got 2 of them.
They have 2 of these. And doing the measurements and comparing them, they are dropping the same amount of firepower in each bomb as the broadside of an Iowa-class battleship.
Which is exactly how big?
9 tons of explosive.
So overall, they've got 18 tons of explosives.
They have 18 ton. These are 9-ton bombs. I stared at that for a moment and went, the USS New Jersey fires 9 1-ton projectiles. I'm not okay with you dropping 9 tons of bomb in the same spot. That's insane.
Now imagine the look on the enemy's face though when you drop a 9-ton bomb on them though.
You have a miniature mushroom cloud and then begin to wonder if you drop tactical nuclear warheads. I'm not kidding. It has a destructive force to create a foxhole, quote unquote, the size of a football stadium.
Wow.
So, ladies and gentlemen, if you need a new sporting arena, the Orks have a thing for you.
Boom bomb construction. Or demolition, we do both.
For the same price.
Indeed.
Moving on to a more unique aircraft.
Yes, the fighter bomber. Armed with 3 big shooters and carrying ordnance such as the super rocket and the grot bombs, it's a relatively good dogfighter, relying on their heavy armament and reinforced armor plating to make up for a lack of speed and maneuverability compared to other aircraft. While at the same time, apparently it does have blistering speed despite having not as much speed as other aircraft.
So, ladies and gentlemen, I call bullshit on it not having as much speed. We have a vastly intricate design and one that is very complicated. The Orks have engineered something marvelous. You see, on mini fighter bombers, I decided to look at, out of the mini fighter bomber types, I decided to look at the straight winged variant with the oversized tail wing. Because it made the most sense in terms of doing the math before we put it in the wind tunnel as to whether or not it would fly. It flies like a traditional prop plane in terms of maneuverability, at speeds in excess of 1100 kilometers an hour, aka Mach 1. As a matter of fact, the frame will hold together at 5200 kilometers an hour, which is the maximum simulated speed we could get in the wind tunnel. This is close to Mach 4.8 and faster than anything claimed by even the Eldar.
I'm sorry, did you say the Orks have something faster than Eldar aircraft?
Yes.
Bloody hell. Was it painted red by any chance?
This one was actually painted yellow.
Now imagine it get painted red. It'll go much faster.
At 5,200 kilometers an hour simulated in the wind tunnel, which let me make sure you guys understand. I have to look at my research notes.
Isn't that about 3 times the speed of sound?
It's 4.8 times the speed of sound.
So nearly 5 times the speed of sound it can fly.
Which means the wind tunnel was generating 130 kilometers an hour of wind. It still had a lift-to-drag ratio of 0.98. Which means it could fly at that speed. That is the 130 kilometers an hour is the maximum safe wind speed the wind tunnel can generate.
I've just now got this mental image in my head of this Ork getting into his fighter bomber, going off to try and chase down some Elder, and just hear him just go like, "What?" He's like, "Was that a craft? Yes, I think it overshot us." And he comes back around the world about an hour later. What?
Its amazing speed would only require 201.7 kilonewtons of thrust, which is about 1/3 more than an F-16. It's doable. I can't believe I'm saying this. This aircraft is a legitimate jet-based threat.
All I can really say in that case is, well done, Orks.
Except for one problem. There are no weapon guidance systems on it whatsoever. Its missiles, its guns, and its bombs are all eyeballed.
I can imagine it being hard to pin down a target when you're travelling at 5 times the speed of sound.
And you're traveling faster than the target can possibly hope to attain.
That's what I say. If it fired, would it be able to outrun its own bullets?
Sadly, it would catch its bullets at 106 meters. We actually did the math for that.
So shooting with this thing is pretty much pointless because you're going to shoot yourself.
The bullet will slow down after 106 meters to the point you will catch it. So the only way you can legitimately fire while you're in this aircraft is if you're pulling up, so that the drop of the bullet doesn't cause it to hit your own plane.
Fair enough.
Which brings us to the biggest issue: is its turning radius.
I can imagine it being the entire continent of North America at least.
It turns at 4 degrees per second at combat speeds like this, with its wings and proportions. It takes 45 seconds to pull a 180. At 5,200 kilometers an hour, 45 seconds is 59 kilometers before it turns around. And we know for a fact that Ork pilots will not slow down for anything and will only do their combat turns at full freaking speed.
Which makes you wonder, will the pilot end up being liquefied at any point?
At that speed and that turning radius, you are generating 159 Gs.
How many?
159.
Now, how many Gs does it take to kill someone? A normal human. 14, so it's doing 11
Assuming
11
the
times
Orks
smoke.
are 1/3 tougher than a person, because that's what we're led to believe is they're tough. The Ork still dies at 19 Gs.
Even if the Ork was twice as tough as a human, he'd still die.
The amount of gravitational force being applied to his body is enough to snap the backbone of a blue whale.
So they're going to go high speed. Work! Fuck.
He is pulling enough Gs that he is getting more gravitational force than if you attempted to slingshot around the sun at just inside the range at which we can get close to the sun before we burn up.
Sounds about right for Orks.
Armor-wise, it has armor, unlike modern aircraft or the Eldar. The Orks slapped anywhere from 50 at the thinnest point to 90 millimeters of armor plating onto it. To illustrate how thick that is, Tiger 131 at the Bovington Tank Museum has a 90 millimeter thick gun mantlet.
So pretty thick.
I mean, there's 120 millimeters of steel plate behind it on the turret, but yeah, there's 90 millimeters of armor. Orks, why did you do this?
Let's put it this way, you combine that intense speed with that thickness of armour, you see another aircraft coming towards you, ram it!
I mean, yeah! If you have to eyeball your shots anyway, and your max range is 105 meters.
Who cares about shooting anything? We can just plow through them. They're probably going to be shooting stuff they do like a gunning run anyway.
I would not be surprised if they mounted a ramming prow on the front of this thing somehow. It would kill the aerodynamics, but you could probably do it.
They probably wouldn't even need the ramming prow. Just use the thickness of the front armor and just ram. With that speed, you're a bullet.
But it flies.
It flies.
It flies stupidly fast. And it probably killed the pilot.
About 10 minutes ago. So let's look at something a bit more unusual. The Wasbum Blaster Jet. These things are generally improvised flying machines covered in a whole bunch of weird mech boy weapons, including custom mega cannons, teleporter mega blasters, smasher guns, stick bomb launcher, and a big shooter turret, and often uses a custom force field generator.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, this just got really weird. I mean, super weird. The wings are cut in a swept-back design, but then angled upwards, which completely counters the point of having a swept-back design. Meaning, they would generate the same amount of lift if you just made them straight. Furthermore, the tail fin is so large it creates a whiplash effect. This is the same effect that happens when you open the rear-facing window in a pickup truck and then spit out the side window, and the spit comes back around and hits you in the back of the head.
I can't say I've ever done that before.
Can it fly? No. Flat out, no. The wings don't generate enough lift, and the tail fin creates counter-lift forces that cause it to actually stick to the ground. I hate to say it, but the Orks made something that will not fly under any conditions.
Unless they believe hard enough.
You can make it go as fast as you possibly want. The only thing it's going to do is it's going to get to the end of the runway, go off the cliff, and proceed to slam into the ground.
But at least they'll be entertained by the explosion.
I am now also going to go on record as saying the following. An actual aircraft carrier would be easier to make fly.
That's quite the statement.
Yes, the helicarrier from the Avengers has a better chance of actually working than this thing.
And you were doing so well, Orks. You were doing so well.
You were doing so well. I did not expect to have an aircraft that had a negative lift generation.
No. I can't say that I was expecting it either.
I just stared at it and went, You actually push yourself to the ground? You mean like a race car? What? Firepower-wise, it has some of the most unique firepower I've ever seen. I would have never thought to teleport my enemy on top of me and then watch them fall to the ground.
It's amusing, if nothing else.
I would have never thought to equip an aircraft with a grenade launcher.
Because Orks.
I would have never thought to equip an aircraft with a gun that literally fires hammers.
Stop. Hammer time.
And then I think about it, and I realize that Eldar aircraft are so thinly armored that if a hammer hits it, it might actually knock it out of the sky.
Yeah.
I don't have much else to say here. We couldn't put it in the wind tunnel for very long because it was deemed unstable and unsafe. And it just the math, all the math we did says this thing will not fly ever.
Fair enough then. So we'll move on to the heavy bomber, which are large orc bombers, hence the name, used for heavy bombardment. Who would have thought? These things were actually inspired by Imperial Marauder bombers, and they actually also produced a low-flying ground attack variant known as a blaster bomber, which is armed with shooters, zap guns, and rockets.
These things were inspired by the B-24 Mitchell. I'm sorry, Games Workshop, you tried to pull another fast one. We literally brought a B-24 Mitchell model, sat them side by side, did all the measurements, and I stared in disbelief. It has the same flight characteristics. It has the same wingspan. It has the same fuselage size. It has the same tail fin. It has the same rough flight speed of 330 kilometers an hour. And it also has a shitload more armor. But as far as lift capabilities, the ability to fly, and hold itself together, its wingspan, and everything, it's a B-24 Mitchell.
At least it flies.
It flies. I mean, it's proven design. Orks just copied it, just like the Daka Jet. They literally took an existing aircraft and went, hey, that looks pretty. I'm going to make one. And made it fly. It won't do more than 390 kilometers an hour, though, before you risk the wings falling off. So don't. Just don't do that, and you should be good. It has slightly less armor than the other Ork aircraft, though. And by slightly less, I mean a lot less.
Fair enough.
Unlike the other Ork aircraft that have armor as thick as tanks, this one only has about 7 to 8 millimeters of armor.
So still more armor than an Eldar tank.
Actually, no. They gave it less armor than an Eldar tank. They give it less armor than an Eldar aircraft.
That is surprising.
It surprised me too. Like,
Orks, what are you doing? The Eldar have better armor than you now. What the hell are you doing?
It shocked us when we took the model apart and then compared it to the other Ork models and realized just how thin it was. And then
there we go.
I mean, we measured it on 1/40th scale and it came out to 17 nanometers. I don't know what else to say. It's that thin. Now for the one that even made the physicist go, I don't know.
Yes, the 50-ton flying potato. The mine layer. Now, this craft is a flying potato. It's suspended in midair by repulsor fields and uses powerful engines to propel itself in clouds of thick smoke. It's sometimes armed with a kill cannon or multiple big shooters, and features numerous bomb arrays, which contain row upon row of specially built repulsor mines, which contain themselves in weak repulsor fields. The mines are placed by the mine layer's claw, and after the fields are activated, they float in midair until someone passes under them, which then causes the mine to drop and go boom. It's about as aerodynamic as a potato from an initial glance, but it's probably worse than that, isn't it?
Okay. Fly, this does not. This is less aerodynamic than a hammer.
Is it less aerodynamic than the brick wall?
It's less aerodynamic than a steel sheet.
Bloody hell. You're doing so well, Orks, and you have the potato.
Repulsor fields are not. This is just a hunk of metal that you put an engine on. I can't get a lift to drag ratio because there's none to give. The brick wall at the end of the wind tunnel has better characteristics for flying. As far as the repulsor fields go, I consulted an actual theoretical physicist. He even looked at it. I explained the theory, and he said, well, here's what I know about repulsor field theory. 2 hours later, this thing shouldn't fly.
No.
And I went, okay. Thank you for your time in the interesting intellectual conversation. He said, you're quite welcome. Bring me something more entertaining next time. The mines actually make sense though.
So he got something right.
You're replacing hot air with repulsor fields. In theory, it should work. In theory, using the idea that the repulsor fields generate their own mass of gravity that counters the mass of gravity for the planet that you're hovering over. They work exactly like anti-aircraft / anti-bomb balloons that you saw positioned over cities during the Second World War. It's just a matter of a pilot flying at night or a pilot not paying terrible attention and running right into them.
Fair enough.
I find it weird that scientifically this thing should not be possible, but the mines that it lays are completely plausible. Dear Orks.
So he got something right.
Dear Orks, you were my reason for alcohol today.
So overall, compared to Space Marines and Eldar, how do these three rank so far? What's the worst and what's the best so far?
They're entirely random. But compared to the others, Eldar fanboys, please don't be mad. You're only second place. And that's
Who's first?
strictly because of the fighter bomber. Because if an orc can survive that, then you know what? I'm okay with it.
So Orcs are number one, are you saying?
Yes.
Cue that We Are Number One theme song. Do, 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 do. Sorry. Get some orcs singing that. For meme purposes. Anyway, that's the last craft we're looking at today, so join us next time where we'll be taking a look at the Tau. Which should be interesting. Wouldn't you agree?
Well, considering that they base all of their aircraft off of sea creatures, I honestly don't know how this is going to work out.
I would assume they'd work well, considering they're hydrodynamic, at least in theory. Could work for aerodynamic.
Yeah.
But anyway, we'll find out soon enough. So, this has been Remnants from 40k Theories.
And this has been Fiaura the Tank Girl.
And we'll see you all again next time.
See you
Bye-bye.
then.